T-minus 17 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Go for main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond. Of the Space Shuttle.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, Nicole. How you doing? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the fourth conversation in Conversations Sheltered in Place. I'm really excited to have Nicole here today, Nicole Stott. And this is a conversation. This is, if it's an interview, though, you could be the interviewer and I'll be the interviewee.
Yeah.
We hope this finds everybody safe and healthy and adapting to our present situation, navigating this crisis. And I think part of the way we navigate through this crisis is through perspective. And I think we're going to talk a lot about perspective today and ways that we could come out of this stronger, more unified, and better equipped to handle any other crises that come down the chute. So, hi, Nicole.
Hi.
How
I was looking, we had talked earlier about like having some, talking about the Nemo experience, the living underwater, or go to inner space to learn how to live and work in outer space. And I just was trying to look like you couldn't see me looking at files to try to find a couple fun pictures, but there are some, so we'll find them along the way.
I found one.
I'm sporting my Nemo shirt here.
Oh, that won't work though. Yeah. You are. Look at that, Nemo 9. So what is Nemo 9?
I'm going to go the wrong way.
Some people might not know what Nemo 9 is.
So Nemo, I don't know if you can see. Let's get that right up in the view there. So Nemo 9. So Nemo, like NASA always has the acronyms for everything, right? So Nemo, NEEMO, stands for NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations. And you and I were together on the 9th mission of Nemo. And I think the idea was always that we would go into this extreme environment, living underwater in the ocean, in this habitat that was called Aquarius, about the size of a school bus, that would prepare us for going and living and working in space. And I don't know about you, but I think it was absolutely the best analog to living in space. When we went, I think one of the things that we helped influence was that the missions would actually be missions too. They'd be missions like what we would do in parallel with the strategy that NASA had going on at the time. So that was fun. I think I'm all by myself. I'm gonna ask Ron where he went. Let's see, Ron, where'd you go? I'll keep talking about Nemo until Ronnie gets back. Yeah, so Ron and I spent 18 days together, and you may have noticed his little comment in the Facebook and social media announcement about us figuring out how not to kill each other in that 18 days underwater. It was such a special mission to be on, such a special place to be, and really, just like space, to experience the planet in a whole new way. As it surrounded us, and to be in this beautifully protected reef area, sitting about 60 feet underwater, and just like in space, you can't, if something goes wrong, you can't just swim to the surface to solve the problem. You have to deal with it at 60 feet underwater, and absolutely the best preparation for going and living and working in space. Okay. So I don't know how to work this thing. So I'm going to send Ronnie a text too. Where are you? I'll just keep talking in the blind here. And he might have to restart us at some point, but just so you all know, a little background, Ron and I, we met each other, oh my gosh, 20 years ago when we were both selected into the NASA astronaut class of 2000, and became close friends. Our families are very close. Ron and his awesomeness wife, Carmel, are the godparents to my husband, Chris, and I's son, Roman. we have, I think, basically grew up together in the astronaut office. And while we didn't get to fly in space together, we did get to have this mission underwater. And yeah, very special. I have memory of Ron and I sitting at the window of the habitat at one point. And this is not that picture, but I think, can I find one? Big lightning. Actually, this one's fun. Let's see if I can show it, and then we'll see if share screen works. These looks are like, this is who Ronnie and I are. Let's see. Share screen. There we go. Okay. You guys are all going to crack up and laugh at me. Okay, I'm going to shut this because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm feeling abandoned by Ron right now. Can I tell you that? Here, I'm going to call him. You can watch me call him and talk to him. So excited. Okay. Well, I'm on video right now as the I'm sharing our call. Can you see me? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I am. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to share screen again and see what happens. All right. Bye. Text me when you're. All right. Computer crashing in Tucson. So you just have me. I don't even know what to do. I can't engage with you. Let's see if I can see if there's any comments in the chat area. Like that. Love you guys. Scuba diving is a hobby. Yeah, love that question. So that's from Juniper. And yeah, I was already a recreational diver before starting into the training for this NEMO mission. And I believe Ron was too. I don't know if he had actually had his certification at that point, but got it to be able to participate. And really, really cool because we use diving as a way to train for our spacewalks too. So in the big pool at Johnson Space Center, it's called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. It's this ginormous swimming pool. It's like 200 feet long by 100 feet wide and 40 feet deep, and has this mock-up of the space station in it. And so we get into the same suits that we would use if we were doing a spacewalk, and we kind of move around in the pool on the structure and practice spacewalking, learning how to do an EVA. So had to have it for that. And then, but for me, diving, I always consider, as a recreational, I didn't want my mask off. I didn't want somebody knocking my regulator out of my mouth or having to put all the equipment on underwater after it's been taken off of me and swim into the surface, that kind of stuff. I didn't want to have to do that. And that was there. I had a lot of anxiety about having to do the training for this mission because we were going to be doing all of these advanced things. We were using some pretty advanced scuba rigs with the double tanks and the integrated comm masks, and as well as some of our stuff was with the big hard hat helmets and the umbilicals. And so you had to do all these things like lay on the bottom of the ocean in the in this hard hat helmet, let the whole thing flood, and then, evacuate it and be able to recover that. A lot of swimming without the mask on, to do line searches in case, something had gone wrong. And so it was really very stressful for me at first to think about having to do these things and to the swim test that we had to do and that stuff. But I practiced a lot, and I found it's really cool how we can overcome these anxieties by just training ourselves, by training and doing a little bit more than I knew I was going to have to do when I went down to, Key Largo with these folks and had them making me do it at 60 feet underwater, was one of the best things I ever did. And now when I get in and dive, I feel like I'm much more prepared for managing things if they do go wrong, whether I'm with my family or my friends diving, or I'm going off and doing something that's more of a, of a training kind of experience too. A friend of Ron and I's, Nick Skytland, just, and Nick, I promise I apologize, I never pronounce your last name correctly, but just logged on, and we miss you too. And thank you for all the help you've always given us through our training. And I know you're doing great work with things now. And Juniper, you're welcome. I can't say enough about the Nemo mission and what we did to prepare to go to space with it. I know Ronnie, when he gets back on, we're going to talk about some of this things that go along with the isolation that we're in and the confinement. And Jean Clateau, I think that's how you would pronounce your last name. Can you help us to manage the confinement in this new environment? And I'm assuming that, Jean, you mean this new environment of us staying in our homes when maybe we didn't choose to do that. When we go to space, or we go and we do an Aquarius mission living underwater, we've purposefully trained to go do that. We've already prepared in our own minds that we're going to be living in this isolated place, that we're going to have to deal with things differently, right? So we've done all of this work where we're training to work as a team, as a crew, how you manage that in these different environments. And so now, where we're in this place that, even though it's familiar to us, our own homes, it's a little bit more challenging, I think, because we're not choosing, to do this. However, I thank all of you for doing it. I think we're in a place right now where this is our job. This is our task as crew members here on Spaceship Earth, right? We know, just like we do when we're in space on a space station, or we're on an Aquarius module underneath the ocean, there are certain things we have to do to keep ourselves alive and to keep our crewmates, our whole crew, to survive where we are. And I think that's what we're doing right now. We are behaving like crew members. We're doing what we need so that we and our families and our friends and all of the crew members on Spaceship Earth can survive. So I'll tell you, the two things that stand out the most for me in the way I'm trying to deal with this, and as I reflect on the time I had in space or underwater and how we manage that, are really, you go to those places and it's going to be new. The way you're going to live is going to be different. The way you move, floating in space and floating underwater in some ways. The things you eat, all of it is just this new place, and you are in awe of it. You want to experience it, get to know it a little better. And that's what I'm trying to do here at home too. As much as I'm familiar with this room that I'm sitting in right now, I'm trying to look at it just a little bit differently, to appreciate having my husband and son here with me, and for us to be able to, just look out the window and not take for granted what we have around us, and how we can support each other. And then the other thing I would say is, again, just like we do when we live in space or underwater, is we try to maintain communication with the people that we care about. We try to reach out with them and share the experience with them. And I'm trying to do that same thing here. Take advantage of things like this, where I can make eye contact with, the people I care about, and I can't necessarily be in the same room with them, but we've got so many tools that we can use to allow us to communicate. Let's see. Rui Mara. So this is kind of cool too. Facebook, all this social media, we get to meet people that we don't ever have had the chance to meet me, but and then they come into our lives and they support things. And you'll see this spacesuit behind me, this colorful spacesuit. Some of the work I do is with the Space for Art Foundation, which is all about space art and healing, and we work with kids all over the world doing these space-themed art therapy projects. And you end up finding people that just reach out to you and engage and help support that. And this question, let's see, a little bit different. What are the main EMU differences between the neutral buoyancy suits and the ones you use in orbit? Okay, yeah. So what I'm getting asked about here is, what's the difference between the suit we use in space and the one we use that we're training in the pool with? The overall suit is exactly the same. The only real differences are in space, when we go out the door, you'll notice that we have these like backpacks on us, and the whole entire life support system that allows us to breathe, to stay cool, and to communicate is all managed through that life support. It looks like we got Ronnie back. And
I'm back.
You're back. And here, I'm going to finish answering this question, and then we'll go, because I'm taking control now, right? But we're talking about the difference between the EMU for space and for training in the pool. And I was just getting to the point where in space, all about the life support is in that backpack that you have. In the pool, they put that backpack on you, but it doesn't really have life support in it. They've got these umbilicals that run to you with your air and your water and the communication lines and anything kind of powered that you need. But as far as what is the person in that suit, it really feels very much the same. And you've got these divers in the water that, help move you around and avoid interference with that umbilical. And I don't know about you, Ron, but I was very happy that it actually was so much easier to move in that suit in space than it was in that pool. The pool, to me, was the most physically challenging training we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to move, and it's harder to stop.
Yeah, you got to be, and that's why what I always thought was so funny. You really, in the pool, because you got the drag of the water, and the suit still weighs 200 and something pounds, and they try to get you neutrally buoyant, but you've really got to fight. You are working to move yourself in that suit around in the swimming pool. And in space, it's like this graceful ballet kind of thing. You've got to be thinking every step of the way, okay, I'm moving. Okay, how am I going to stop? Have I got too much momentum going? That's, Newton was right with all that stuff. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, you want to know where I've been?
Where have you been, Ron?
So my computer crashed.
Yeah.
And it won't come back. I think my computer just died. I think it's permanently dead. I had to run and go get another computer, and then I had to download a browser, and then I had to. And we'll probably never do one of these things again. But thank you for holding down the fort.
Absolutely. I felt so alone there. And then I remembered there were the live comments, and that was great, and people are really engaging. I just answered a couple questions. Nick, and I told him I apologize because I can never remember how to pronounce his last name. Skitland, is on here somewhere just saying hi, and that he misses us. And I told him we miss him too.
The other thing, I am not in as a host right now, so I don't mean like a host on Westworld. I just mean like I'm not here. I don't have any controls right now.
Okay.
So I don't.
So we're all out of control.
We're going to end the broadcast. I think we're going to have to be talking indefinitely for like the rest of our lives now, because I can't end the broadcast.
That could be painful for you, as I think you mentioned something about having to suffer through 18 days underwater with me. So.
I think I said the other way. I said that you didn't kill me. You were down there for 3 weeks and you didn't kill me.
It was mutually not killing was good.
What you been talking about since I've been gone?
Well, I explained a little bit more about the Aquarius mission and what we did there. I answered a couple questions, a little bit about the isolation. I shared my two kind of strategies right now. I mean, reflecting a lot on what's going on, but and how we dealt with that in space. But I shared primarily that my two things are just getting used to introducing yourself again to what surrounds you, just like we have to when we go to space, and then the communication. This is it's important. That we can, that you can get a little eye contact going every now and then. I think it's one thing to not be able to be physically in the same place with somebody, but we have really great tools that allow us to communicate in a way that I think we can get a pretty good assessment of how somebody is doing too.
Right. So what are some of your memories from living on the bottom of the ocean?
Wow, lots of them. One of my memories that's my favorite, and this will probably not one that you're expecting, but there's one that was after we got back up, and I put my other pair of shorts on, and I'd lost probably, I don't know how many pounds I'd lost coming. It was like and I remember thinking we ate like little piglets down there. I mean, we ate nachos every night.
When they come out of being sheltered in place and come out of quarantine, they're gonna have the same experience, that they're gonna realize that they've lost all this weight?
I'm not. I think it's because I'm not diving, 6 hours a day either. But I was surprised by that. But I think it was kind of cool how we really, I think we really appreciated where we were, and that. And I know both of us, at least, we're probably thinking about, oh, how is this going to compare to going to space? But I was telling folks, and I was trying to find this one picture of us sitting in front of the window, where before we left at the end of the mission, I mean, we were sitting there and we both, because neither of us had flown yet, and just talking about, man, if we never go to space, this was such a cool thing to have Earth like surrounding you, to be in this environment of inner space that gave you this whole new kind of, I don't know, micro perspective on the planet that we live on that you just don't get to think about very often.
I think for me, it was my first real exposure to the awe and wonder of our planet. Because here at ground level, we're surrounded by awe and wonder, but we have learned to take it for granted, right? Yeah. But when you go to a unique environment, and I think there's something to be said about it being a hostile environment. Not that we had hostile creatures surrounding us, but just the fact that we were dependent on our life support systems for our very life, because without that we couldn't survive in that environment. That just makes it that much more special, and seem that much more out of the ordinary, which allows you to appreciate, I think, the awe and wonder of where you're at. But the good news is we're surrounded by awe constantly. We have a tremendous, awe-inspiring planet that, from any perspective, including the perspective where we're sitting right now. So.
Yeah, and I think that's why. I mean, that's a much better way to say what I was trying to say with the, how we appreciate what we really think we're already familiar with.
Yeah.
I can look out of my backyard right now, and I could probably pick 20 things that are awesome. Easily, whether it's the way, the flowers are blooming on that crown of thorns that were blooming before.
That's the dolphins that swim around your canal?
Yeah, there are dolphins that swim out here, manatee. And I've always been in awe of those, right? But I think when you can, there's so much that we are surrounded by that we just, we kind of, I don't make ourselves immune to it almost. It's like not realizing that we live on a planet, right? Yeah, right. We all know that. That's a pretty awesome thing, and that we're all in space like this, and yet it doesn't. I mean, I love that now. That's with me all the time. Think about it.
20 miles away.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Very cool. Very cool. So how's your sheltering in place doing?
It's going all right. I have to admit, I feel very fortunate. We are comfortable here. My husband, Chris, Chris and I, we both were already working out of the house together. So we've had a few years to adjust to that already.
So do you have like a morning commute? Like you kiss each other goodbye and then go off to your different parts of the house?
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of find your spot and then, come back together at lunchtime and things and dinner time.
Yeah.
The biggest change for us right now has been, the schools are not operating as schools in the physical sense. And Roman is 17. He's in 11th grade, and guess who's getting to learn history all over and remember how to do math and that kind of stuff. So
you should have a godfather.
The godfather could come in and help us. I told people that too, by the way.
You did?
I did already. Yeah,
I did as well, just in case you didn't.
Yeah.
Hey, did you talk about Expedition? See, I have no idea what you talked about, so I don't know.
Assume we've talked about nothing, and then I'll tell you, no, Ron, we've already spoken about that.
Expeditionary behavior, because that's what I like. That's what we told people we were going to talk about. So.
Yeah, well, not really, other than, and I don't even know if I said this, because I'm old and can't remember things. But, just that I think one of the things that's interesting about what we're going through right now is that we prepare to go to space, we prepare to go do an underwater mission, and we train for it. We train together as a crew. We train, and everything we do, whether it's learning the systems on those vehicles or not, we're really learning how to work as a crew to manage them, right? And we made a choice to apply to be an astronaut or to do this, and to choose to go to space and live on a space station that's relatively confined, although I would argue it's actually ginormous. And so we've had preparation for it. Whereas here, we didn't have a choice. We've been put into this position, and we did talk a little bit about how what we're doing right now is behaving like crew members. We're doing the job we need to do to take care of our family and friends, and to do the best we can to ensure the life of all the crew on Spaceship Earth. So, exactly. Yeah.
So can you talk about some of your training, specific training, like NOL stuff that you've done, or training that's specifically trying to bring out expeditionary behavior? And I do want to get to questions too, because there's some great questions.
Yeah.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. I think we do. It's interesting. We do. And they started doing more of this when we actually started living on the space station, knowing that we weren't just going to be doing a short duration mission on a space shuttle and spending 2 weeks in space together. We were going to be going and living for months at a time with each other as crews of 6, or more at times. And I don't know. I loved all of the expeditionary training we did. And I would consider the emergency training we did was that as well, like going off and doing Soyuz water survival in the middle of the Black Sea. That to me, that was, you had to know how to work as a team inside of that vehicle. You had to do all of these things to keep you from, sinking the spacecraft in the middle of an ocean somewhere or a sea, and keeping each other alive while you did it. Cold weather survival, going out to the, outside of Quebec in this Valcartier area, and, spending 10 days.
Mine in Russia, it was even colder.
Russia was. So I don't know about you, but when we did the Soyuz winter survival, it was the coldest winter in 100 years.
How cold was it?
So it was like minus 48 or something.
That was minus 34 in mine. So
yeah.
You beat me.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you what, with the right equipment, I would take minus 48 over just above freezing and wet and icky. I would take that.
I agree with that, because I've experienced both. But I think one of the things that you're bringing out is, it's really easy to talk about expeditionary behavior when things are not stressful. It's easy to talk about self-care and looking out for others and looking for telltale signs that people are under pressure and all that kind of stuff when everything's going great. It's when you're really, really stressed out, you're really, really tired, you're not feeling well, and everybody's like that, and everybody's starting to get on each other's nerves. That's when it really comes in handy to really know how to navigate that. And I know that we've both experienced those situations.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really pleasantly surprised me on the space station, and I on the space shuttle too, seeing how this came to life was. And I'll use a station example. 3 o'clock in the morning, you're comfortably sleeping and you're, floating in your sleeping bag in your crew compartment, and the klaxon starts going, the alarm. It sounds a lot like your smoke alarm in your house, but louder and just, this grating, like you can't wait to silence it kind of sound. But it definitely wakes you up. And to watch how this crew I had trained with on the ground, how we all floated out of our crew compartments. We, number one, made sure we had accounted for every person on the crew. We got to the place where we had trained to deal, the control center on the station, to where we had trained to deal with responding to an emergency. We knew what the bold-faced things we had to do, like the immediate actions we had to take to make sure that we were safe. And then we all did our jobs. And it was, I remember watching that in awe and thinking, holy moly, we can really prepare ourselves to deal with something that could be quite catastrophic, and very deliberately and diligently and calmly do that. And it was such a nice thing to see happen. Yeah.
So how about some questions?
Okay.
Okay, we got, is it Rui Mara? Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. Yeah.
How crucial is earth sounds to people in isolation? Running water, rain, winds, birds, traffic. I think that's a great question.
Yeah. I think it's really important. I mean, I don't know about you, Ron. We've talked before about how when you're inside of the space station, right? It's the noises, the sounds that you really hear are like the sound of the space station. You know, the pumps running, fans, computers, things like that. You might hear somebody running on the treadmill, communication, you know, the comm over the different loops and stuff. But there's not any like natural noises other than human ones, which do still happen in space too.
Can you give an example?
You could give us a really good example. But we're all human. Anyway, so I remember thinking like, we would have like some of those, I can't remember who it was. It might've been Jeff or Mike that had one of those little sound machine kinds of things, or up on your computer, you could bring up videos and, you know, and music or sounds. But I remember looking out the window and imagining the sound, because really it was like you were watching the planet with the mute button on. You know, you'd see this big storm moving around and it just looked like this white, billowy, swirly, beautiful thing. And on the other hand, you knew that underneath it, you know, totally different thing going on. But I remember trying to imagine those sounds as I watched what I was seeing out the window too.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there's lots of different sounds that remind you of Earth, right? To bring you back to Earth. I remember once I was working, I think on my first mission. So I've probably been in space for 4 or 5 days, and it's a tough environment. It's a challenging environment to get used to. You know, first of all, you're really, really busy. You know, they've got, 20 something hours of stuff crammed into a single day that you're supposed to get done, and you're expected to get done. So you're working really hard, you're working really fast, concentrating. And so there's a level of stress, there's a level of tension always of what you're doing. And I remember I was working on some tasks that I had on the first thing, and all of a sudden I realized I was relaxed. I didn't feel as tense as I was before. And then I realized I was relaxed because music was playing. Yeah. Somebody had set up speakers and was playing music, and I don't even remember what the music was, but it was, and I thought about that for a second, and I thought, oh, music is kind of a tie to home, right? It's a tie to Earth. We're in this hostile environment. Your psyche and your body is trying to figure out where you are, and there's no context to compare it to. And so I think just having that subconscious connection to Earth made me relax. And so I think it's a really good question. I think if you have the opportunity to get out in nature safely, I've been going on hikes on pretty remote trails where I don't come in contact with anybody except for my wife who's with me, and that I think is really therapeutic and a really good thing to do. But if you can't do that, then just as much as anything you can do to connect yourself back to the natural, to the outside world, if you will, the better you'll be, as long as you can do that safely.
All right. I know not to drag this on, but I mean, I think it's really important. These sensory things are important to us as human beings. It's why having the eye contact thing, I think, is important when we communicate with people, and or just hearing them even.
I didn't have eye contact with you just then when you said that, because I was reading one of the comments.
You were looking at something else, yeah.
I was.
So you don't pay attention to me, but anyway, remember when, it's like in your house when the power goes out and the refrigerator goes off and you realize all of a sudden how loud it was before, this kind of new silence that you experience. Right. And I remember the same thing happening on the space station. If we had like an electrical issue and all of a sudden the power, some power bus went down, and they were like, wow, it was really loud in here before. And not having noticed that until it goes away. Right. And then it was cool because the engineers had strategically, put the equipment in places where if the sounds went away on the left or on the port side of the station, that meant it was you could psych out which electrical bus it was. And if every other light was on, and, those kinds of things that they deliberately built into the system for us to use those sounds to troubleshoot a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that anybody can practice right now is basically increasing your awareness. So basically we've all been sent to our rooms. We've all been sent for some quiet time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm noticing a lot of stuff I didn't notice before. So because when the noise level goes down, the other things start to rise up. Susanna Spire, I think. I hope I said that right. It says, "Hi Nicole, hi Ron. I would be interested in any advice you have for how do you say that?
Immunocompromised.
Immunocompromised people will only be able to leave their house for doctor appointments between now and when a vaccine is available. They must have taken a lot of time to simply survive while on the ISS, but both of you were also quite productive during that time. Did all the survival stuff challenge your focus? Did you plan your daily activities down to the half hour in advance?" So I think our daily activities are planned down to the advance, or the second maybe. What do you think?
Well, I mean, for the last part of that that question, we have a really structured timeline set up for us, whether we were on the shuttle or on the station, where they really do. I mean, they at one point it was down to like 5-minute increments, and you had to do things in certain orders, and then they discovered that you can't really do that to people. You've got to give them some flexibility. So I think they still do schedule it down to that timeline, but they allow you to maneuver it around a little bit. And but I think there's something to that. I don't think we need to do that to ourselves right now, but I think we do need to get into kind of a rhythm of things. I make a real point of just getting out of the pajamas in the morning. It would be real easy to just roll out of bed and come straight to the computer and work, or to do stuff without kind of segregating the day a little bit into the things that there are to do. And that's important from a family standpoint too. And I think that it's beyond the survival stuff of just being there and living there. It's surviving, psychologically, and doing things like, I mean, I remember getting in front of the window was a very transcendent thing for me. During the day, I'd have to set the alarm on my watch to remind me, okay, Nikki, you're here to work, not, spend the whole day with your face planted in the window, but a whole orbit. 90 minutes would go by. And if I didn't set the alarm, I'd have MCC, our control center, calling me like, "Hey, Nikki, how about go clean the toilet, go do the science experiment," whatever it was. Because it was just this way of completely separating, And I think we need to do some of that in this time too. Allow ourselves to just completely separate as well.
Yeah. So, but for folks who are somewhat compromised and can't leave, and this could be a long time. We talk about space shuttle missions being a sprint, and ISS missions, long duration missions, being a marathon. And I think you really need to get into that marathon mindset. You need to pace yourself. You need to do some long-term planning, and look at opportunities in all these things. You have the opportunity to do things that you wouldn't have in the daily grind that we're all used to, and the busyness and everything else. I know that a lot of people are still busy just because we're in our homes, but there is parts of the day that is being given back to everybody. If you had a commute, you don't have a commute anymore. And we can choose what we do with our available time, and so we can choose to do things that are going to be self-improving, I think, and make us give us a benefit when we come out the other side of this. So.
Yeah, I think we all need to figure out how we take something away from it too. Something that, how do we change our lives during this time that is healthier and more, I don't know, there's kind of a spiritual aspect to it too, and this retreat almost from, from a grind that we might have all been in, that allows us to, reflect and, think about ourselves even more.
Well, Jeremy Boxer, one of our pals at Constellation, he wants to know, what do you do each day to center yourself in this time of change?
Here now. For me, I think it's what we talked about. It's really allowing myself to take some time to look differently at what's around me. I'm also, we mentioned looking out the window on the space station, and that kind of transcendent feeling there. I never meditated before I went to space. It wasn't something that I did. But that absolutely is, for me, it's the closest thing that I come to with what I felt like in front of that window on a space station. Okay. And so I try to do that. I'm not as diligent about it as I should be, but when I do it, it's kind of like going flying. Every time I end up going flying, I'm like, oh my gosh, why haven't I been doing this? Or scuba diving or something that's, or kayaking or things like that, where I'm like, why aren't I doing this more? It allows me to just, be in that place. And that's what meditation has done for me. And also, art. I know, Ron, the same thing. There's a very transcendent thing about that too. If you get into a project, whether it's art or writing or, even the work that we're doing, if you can really allow yourself to absorb in it, become part of it,
get into the flow state.
Yeah. Doesn't happen often for me, but that's a good thing.
I didn't meditate back when I was flying in space either, and I wish I did. It would, because what's interesting, there's a really good parallel between flying in space and meditating, and for me, and actually a friend, Jeff Gitterman, made this connection a few years ago. In that, in meditation, what you're basically doing is you're detaching from your thoughts, right? You're becoming the observer of your thoughts, and you become the observing awareness, right? And that's what meditation is all about. So the detachment from your thoughts. But when you're in space, you're detaching from the earth. And so when you're talking about being in the cupola or being at a window and just being immersed for 90 minutes of an orbit, that to me is a meditation, because because you are detached from the beauty that you're observing, right? So like when we see a beautiful scene on the earth, you're on the rim of the Grand Canyon or at the foot of a mountain or whatever, gravity is pushing us into that scene. We are inside the frame of the masterpiece that we are observing. But both in space and meditation, we have the opportunity to go outside of the frame of the picture, outside the frame of the masterpiece, and appreciate it from a different perspective. I think that's a really powerful experience, and I think it's a very grounding, centering experience. So yeah, I agree with you.
And I try to share with some friends too that you could always ask the question it's about looking down at Earth, looking down at the planet, and oh my gosh, highly recommend it. There is awesomeness. I mean, I feel like I understand the word awe better just from having that experience, right? But I think in this, and I like the way you described that about being part of the masterpiece. I think the way down here on Earth, in addition to, meditation, where you kind of deliberately take yourself out of the picture in a way, standing on the planet and thinking about, I'm standing my feet are on a planet and looking up. And I don't care if it's day or night. Night gives you a little bit more of things to look at, and far as like consideration of yourself on a planet and the universe and things. But I mean, I find myself now standing feet, like purposely thinking about my feet attached to the planet and looking up and thinking, oh my gosh, I know that beautiful blue sky I'm looking at doesn't go on forever like it seems to from here. And I think about that and how thin that veil is that protects us, right? And then at night, I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, we are on this small little planet, perfect distance from the sun, a little closer, further, not so good for us, right? It's perfectly designed to take care of us. And I don't know, I feel like I get this sense of where we all are together. Yeah. And I encourage, and it's not just go out and look for the station flying over, because you should do that too. You should get that app and know when that space station's flying over. But to just get this sense of awe of, oh my gosh, I'm rotating at this speed, I'm circling the sun, I'm all of these things that just don't come into play through our normal, like, routine lives. Yeah.
I had an interesting experience that's along the same lines as what you're talking about. I want to share it with you because I want to see if you've ever had this experience. So I went out for a run and I came back and I was sitting in my backyard and just laying on the grass in the backyard, right? My dog Pip was next to me, the coolest dog. And I'm just catching some sun, laying in the grass, look up, and I think everybody experiences this to some extent. I'm feeling my weight push me into the grass, right, or pull me into the grass, and so what's actually happening is the gravitational pull from the center of the earth is pulling me down. I think that's interesting, but the other thing that happened is I felt the weight of the atmosphere on me, because the atmosphere has weight. And I thought about that and I said, why am I realizing this? Why have I never felt this before? Because we have sea level pressure, right? So the pressure that we feel on our body is basically the weight of the atmosphere on us, right? And in space, that weight is coming at us at all different directions. That pressure coming. But on the ground, while I'm laying on the ground, the back of my body was all pressed into the grass. And so the only part of me that was feeling that pressure was that particular pressure was on the front. And so I really felt, it was like this sensation that I was, laying on a planet. The planet was pulling me towards the center, and I had this gigantic lightweight blanket of the atmosphere laying on top of me. I think that's kind of what you're getting at, right? I mean,
yeah, I think it's all the kind of sensory things that we can appreciate if we allow ourselves to think about it that way, Right. Yeah. Can we do, I'm noticing a question from Daniel Yount about attaching a telescope to the ISS facing outward towards the stars. And I just have to tell you, I don't know about you, but I still have, I think the petition is still out there for us to get a cupola module on on the top of the space station too, looking out towards space. Yeah. Because we had, that's not me, by the way. We had,
it is you.
It's not me.
It's not me either. It's the person whose computer I had to steal.
Okay. That's okay. I think it's good. Facing towards the Earth, this observatory that we had to just, be in awe of the planet below us and, to see, horizon to horizon and get this view. If you got it really dark in the station, you could see the Milky Way, you could see the stars out there and stuff, that thin line of the atmosphere. But I always remember thinking, man, it would be so awesome to have one of those on top where you could just go. And I think from an operational standpoint, it would have been really good too. Have be able to operate the arm from up there, be able to inspect your space station from a whole other perspective, but to be able to just face in total darkness towards that like deep blackness of space, that like reach into it, feel it, kind of crystal clear black of space that we don't get anywhere else. Yeah. And imagine the video that could come from that too. And then, put a telescope on it.
It's interesting. I always talk about this thing that I did on one of my EVAs, the windshield wiper.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I always talk about just one sweep of it, where I'm above the space station. I'm on the day side of the orbit, and I see the space station below me. But the first sweep of the windshield wiper was on the dark side of the orbit. And so as I was going up above the space station and the lights of the space station were retreating below me, it was a pretty interesting experience. And I had this like 500-pound box in my hands. And at the top of the arc, I thought, let's see what happens if I turn my lights off.
Yeah.
That was not a good idea.
Were you ever scared in space? Yeah, there you go.
It didn't seem like a good idea in the first couple of seconds. Because when I turned my lights off, I saw nothing. Yeah. Absolutely nothing. I didn't see my gloves. I didn't see the box in front of me. I saw black. It's like I went blind. Everything just went black.
Yeah.
But then eventually I started to see my gloves, and I started to see the box, which was a pump, which was a nitrogen pump, and it had this like blue, it just emerged out of this like with this blue glow. And I'm like, oh wow, that's the light of the Milky Way.
Yeah.
Light of the Milky Way. The only thing I see is a box and my gloves, and then I started seeing like a harsher, less beautiful light from below, and I realized we were coming down back towards the station, and the artificial light of the station is. But the entire Milky Way opened up. I saw, satellites whizzing by. They still satellites. It was just absolutely incredible. Once my eyes adjusted, it was like somebody had a dimmer switch and was turning the dimmer switch brighter, on the Milky Way, and it just exploded into my field of view.
That was, I mean, I don't know about you, but, tell me if you felt the same way. This is a little bit different, side of that experience of moving. So I had the same thing. I moved from on the end of the arm, from the end of the station on this arc down into the payload bay of the shuttle with, a 900-pound box. And I
had another box that was 1,100 pounds.
Yeah, that was strapped to the back, the right side of your brain doing, no. We don't know each other very well.
Training again.
And but anywho, so on the end of this arm, holding on to this box, and I remember from the training thinking, oh, I'm going to feel myself moving around. I'm going to feel the arm move. I'm going to feel, I was preparing myself for that. Yeah. I felt like I was absolutely standing still, holding on to this box. The station moved out of my view, Earth rotated below me in my view, and then out of, 25 minutes later, up pops this shuttle payload bay. And I never felt like I ever, other than moving myself, I never, and I credited Kevin Ford, our bug colleague, with being such a wonderful pilot of the station arm that I never felt that. But that was, when I think about isolation, that was this place where I felt, again, it was kind of like looking at Earth from space, where you are separated, and now, you're out at the end of this arm, moving in this big arc from one place to the other, all by yourself out on the end of the arm. And at the same time, I was like, I'm all alone in my little spaceship, at the end of this arm, not moving. I had somehow set my temperature perfectly, so I never had to do the gloves, or it was just, and at one point I thought to myself, okay, Nikki, don't fall asleep. That would not be the thing to do. Don't be the one that falls asleep on the end of the arm. But it was like, at the same time, I felt like, man, if something goes wrong here, my buddy Danny's outside with me. My crew on the inside of the space station is just watching every move of this. My friends and family, not that they could do a whole lot about it, they were watching me from the ground. And the mission control team, it was like, there was this whole, world of people surrounding me too, to make it successful. And that's how I'm trying to think about now too, is that I'm not with those, the people that are backing me up, but right. We've got each other's backs.
Exactly. Yeah. I had a similar experience, but the thoughts that were going through my mind were completely different. I had another time on the space station's arm on a different mission. It was actually during the last flight of Atlantis, and I was bringing a pump module down to Atlantis's payload bay. So the same thing, the space station goes out of my field of view. I hadn't seen the shuttle yet. This time I didn't see the Earth either. All I saw was black, and so I'm holding this thing. There is light, so I'm seeing it, and the same thing. I have no sensation of motion. I'm kind of floating a little bit inside the suit, just slightly. Not floating, but the bars of the foot restraints. I feel myself, going up into them, and so I'm holding this 1,100-pound thing, and all of a sudden, I feel a clunk. It just goes clunk, and right before that happened, like a split second before that happened, the big giant box, it's like somebody grabbed it and tried to yank it out of my hands. Like I'm holding this thing, and it's like all of a sudden it's pulling away from me, and I'm holding it as hard as I can so it doesn't slip out of my hands.
Or take you with it.
My whole body is pitching forward. I feel the bars of the foot restraint digging into the top of my feet, and then I feel a clunk, just a clunk. And I'm thinking to myself, and then it stopped. And I'm thinking, okay, what just happened?
We won't talk about who was flying your arm then. Abrupt stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking to myself, what just happened? Did I? And then your mind starts.
Did I do that? Yeah.
Paranoid things. I'm thinking, did the foot restraint just break off the end of the arm? Am I flying off into space right now? And I'm thinking, well, surely if I was flying off into space, somebody would say something and they would let me know, hey, Ron, you're flying off into space. Then I thought, well, what happens if the comm went down? Because I'm not hearing anything at all. So eventually I talked myself, these are just like little thoughts. I didn't really think that's not happening, but what happened, I think there was yes, the arm was stopped. It was stopped somewhat abruptly and unexpectedly, and the foot restraint has a little over center mechanism, so it did pitch forward. But that was I was very happy when I started seeing Atlantis's payload base starting to come into my field of view.
Did you use your mag in response to that?
No.
That's another NASA acronym, the maximum absorbency garment.
Yeah, which probably has some applicability to being sheltered in place.
Yeah.
Well, Nikki, we got to wrap it up, and I just wanted to just close with some words of advice for folks on what's going on and what they can do and how we're going to get through this.
Okay. Oh, I thought you wanted to. I already shared some. I already shared mine. I think, I think that if I was going to say anything, it's that, especially if we're looking at in terms of the parallel of how we deal with things in space and, or underwater, even in an Aquarius habitat, it's that the way we really survive those things, the way we, overcome the challenges that go along with it is by behaving like a crew and knowing that we all have some responsibility in how the mission is successful. Mm-hmm. And that we have to, even when we might want to be looking out the window, you might have to be cleaning the toilet or something, or doing a science experiment, and you just have to do it. And that's what we're doing now. And I'm thankful to, all the people that are staying at home for the sake of all of us.
Yeah. I think one of the key points that you brought up there is that we have to have a mission attitude, right? I mean, you have to realize that you are on a mission. Everybody has a mission, and in order to accomplish that mission, we need to take care of ourselves. You need to do some self-care, and you need to take care of your fellow crewmates. And those could be crewmates that you're physically located with, and crewmates that you're connected with virtually. I think we have a great opportunity to come through this, much more unified than we ever have been. Because you're in Florida, I'm in Arizona, and everybody is where they are, and we're having this wonderful conversation. And when things return to some semblance of what they were before, then we can take all this stuff with us. Yeah, and more.
Agree.
Right.
All right, love you, man.
Love you too. Thanks, Nicole. Say hi to everybody, and
virtual hugs. Virtual hugs. Thanks, Ronnie, for including me. I'm going to leave the studio and see if it works.
All the best.
All right. See ya.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.